The doctrine of inherited sin, the belief that humanity bears an innate moral corruption passed down from primordial transgression, has profoundly shaped Western consciousness for millennia. This theological framework, while offering explanations for human imperfection, carries significant psychological implications that extend far beyond religious contexts. This video examines the concept of inherited sin, its historical development, its psychological impact on human self-perception, and alternative frameworks that may better serve individual growth and actualization. The concept of inherited or original sin reached its most influential formulation through Augustine of Hippo in the 4th and 5th centuries CE, though its roots stretch deeper into earlier theological speculation. Augustine argued that Adam's disobedience fundamentally corrupted human nature itself, transmitting this corruption to all subsequent generations through procreation. This framework provided a systematic explanation for the persistence of evil and suffering, while underscoring humanity's absolute dependence on divine grace for redemption. However, this doctrine was neither universally accepted in early Christianity nor present in Judaism, from which Christianity emerged. Eastern Orthodox theology traditionally emphasized ancestral consequences rather than inherited guilt, while Jewish thought generally rejected the notion that sin could be transmitted genealogically, instead emphasizing individual moral responsibility and the enduring goodness of creation. When individuals internalize the belief that they are fundamentally corrupted from birth, several psychological patterns frequently emerge, including, but not limited to, diminished self-worth, shame and guilt, and an external locus of control. Perhaps most significantly, inherited sin frameworks create a peculiar paradox regarding human potential. If humanity is created in the divine image yet fundamentally corrupted, what does this mean for human capacity? The doctrine can simultaneously affirm human dignity while undermining confidence in human ability to grow, change, and achieve meaningful goodness through one's own efforts. This paradox often manifests as ambivalence about human achievement and excellence, suspicion toward natural human impulses and desires, difficulty accepting genuine compliments or recognizing authentic growth, persistent anxiety about worthiness despite external accomplishments. Modern psychology offers frameworks that acknowledge human imperfection without requiring doctrines of inherited corruption. From this view, moral and psychological challenges arise from developmental immaturity. Humans are born with immature nervous systems and spend years developing capacities for emotional regulation, perspective-taking, and complex moral reasoning. What appears as moral failing may reflect developmental limitation rather than metaphysical corruption. Evolutionary psychology. Many problematic human tendencies, tribalism, status-seeking, immediate gratification, made adaptive sense in ancestral environments but create difficulties in modern contexts. These represent evolutionary hangovers rather than inherited sin. Social and environmental conditioning. Much of what we struggle with stems from learned patterns, traumatic experiences, and cultural conditioning rather than intrinsic nature. This perspective emphasizes plasticity and the possibility of change. Existential and humanistic psychology propose that humans possess an actualizing tendency, an inherent drive toward growth, meaning, and self-realization. From this perspective, humans are born neither good nor evil, but with potentials in multiple directions. Psychological distress often stems from incongruence between authentic self and conditioned behavior. Self-actualization involves accepting oneself fully while continuing to grow. Meaning and purpose arise from responsible engagement with life's challenges. Buddhist perspective on human nature. Buddhist philosophy offers another alternative, suggesting that suffering arises not from inherited sin, but from ignorance and attachment. Unlike inherent corruption, ignorance can be dispelled through practice and insight. The Buddha explicitly rejected the notion of an unchangeable self or essence, instead emphasizing radical impermanence and the capacity for transformation. This framework reframes human challenges as problems stemming from misunderstanding reality rather than metaphysical taint. Every moment offers opportunity for new choices unconstrained by the past. Liberation comes through direct insight rather than external salvation. Compassion for self and others arises naturally when ignorance is addressed. Moving beyond inherited sin frameworks involves constructing healthier narratives about the self. From fixed to growth mindset, rather than viewing oneself as fundamentally flawed, adopt the perspective that challenges represent opportunities for development. Accepting wholeness. Instead of splitting the self into corrupt nature versus redeemed grace, recognize that you contain multitudes, capacity for both harm and healing, selfishness and generosity, fear and courage. Maturity involves integrating these aspects rather than rejecting half of yourself. Responsibility without shame. You can take full responsibility for your choices and their consequences without carrying shame about your essential nature. This distinction empowers change. You can always choose differently because you are not imprisoned by inherited corruption. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion reveals that treating oneself with kindness, rather than harsh judgment, leads to greater psychological well-being and actual behavior change. When freed from the weight of inherited sin, you can acknowledge mistakes without totalizing self-condemnation. Learn from failures without interpreting them as evidence of fundamental unworthiness. Extend to yourself the same grace you would offer others. Recognize shared humanity in struggle rather than feeling uniquely corrupted. Perhaps most importantly, releasing inherited sin frameworks restores confidence in your capacity to shape your life through incremental change, skill development, and meaning-making. Small, consistent efforts compound over time. You need not wait for dramatic transformation or external salvation. You can begin where you are. Most virtues and capabilities can be cultivated through practice. Patience, courage, wisdom, compassion. These are not bestowed or withheld by fortune but developed through intentional effort. You have the capacity to create meaning even from suffering, to choose your response to circumstances, to align your life with values you recognize as worthy. Rejecting inherited sin does not require naive optimism about human nature. History demonstrates humanity's capacity for tremendous cruelty. However, acknowledging this capacity differs from declaring it essential and inevitable. The capacity for harm stems from numerous sources: social pressures, dehumanization of others, trauma responses, ideological possession, and structural systems that incentivize harmful behavior. Addressing these requires understanding their mechanisms, not attributing them to metaphysical corruption. Some argue that inherited sin doctrines promote necessary humility. However, genuine humility recognizes both limitations and capabilities accurately. False humility that denies real capacities and achievements serves neither truth nor growth. True humility involves recognizing you don't have all answers and can always learn, appreciating how much you depend on others and circumstances beyond your control. Acknowledging mistakes openly without defensiveness. Remaining curious rather than assuming you've arrived. None of this requires believing you are inherently corrupted. Moving beyond inherited sin frameworks doesn't mean claiming self-sufficiency. Human beings are profoundly interdependent. We need communities that support and challenge us, teachers and mentors who share wisdom, relationships that call forth our better qualities, and sometimes we need therapeutic or spiritual guidance. The difference is recognizing that help facilitates your own growth and agency rather than replacing them because you're incapable. The doctrine of inherited sin, whatever its theological merits, carries psychological costs that can inhibit human flourishing. By perpetuating narratives of intrinsic unworthiness and fundamental corruption, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. People live down to diminished expectations of human nature. Deconstructing this framework opens space for alternative understandings that honor both human fallibility and human potential. When you recognize that your struggles stem from developmental challenges, conditioning, and circumstance rather than metaphysical taint, you reclaim agency. You become the author of your continuing development rather than a passive recipient of either corruption or salvation. This shift doesn't promise easy answers or pain-free existence. Life remains challenging, growth requires sustained effort, and we will all continue to fall short of our ideals. But we face these realities from a position of fundamental adequacy rather than fundamental brokenness. capable of learning, changing, and actualizing our potential through conscious choice and persistent effort. The most profound liberation may be this: you are not waiting to become acceptable. You are already the being who can engage the work of growth. Your potential is not locked behind inherited sin, requiring external keys. It resides in your capacity for awareness, choice, and change in each moment. The question is not whether you deserve to flourish, but whether you will choose the practices and perspectives that allow flourishing to unfold. In the end, inherited sin is a cultural idea that has nothing to do with the human race. The Buddha and Lao Tzu never cared about original sin because they lived according to their own experiences. What do you think about inherited sin? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, subscribe for more insights on the transformation of consciousness.